All right. On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche. On yesterday's episode, we asked the question after the Dallas game, would we have a better understanding of where we are with this goalie situation? Has that answer changed? Or do we now have more piles of problems on top of everything else? New episode of Locked On Avalanche. Let's discuss it. Coming at you right now.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche, Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, LockedOnAvalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel over on YouTube. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure you're subscribed to our subtext as well. Link to that is in the show notes below. When you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion on everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast, which we will do a little bit later, sir, when we're obviously, there's only a few games left, and there's kind of struggles in Avalacheville right now with some things. And do we feel like that could carry into the playoffs, or doesn't matter, and you kind of just start at zero and hit the reset button and away you go? Is it that easy? Is it that easy to do? We'll ask that question a little bit later. All right, let's start with this Dallas game. It's the way that we had things done. If you tuned in yesterday, because that game started a little bit later and it was just gonna be a late night for us, we recorded Sunday before the Dallas game, talked mainly about the Edmonton game and kind of leading into the Dallas game. And it was kind of going to be fun to already have that episode released, knowing what happened in Dallas. And now we can go back on it and say, okay, well, the questions that we asked, do we have any answers yet? Are there still questions out there? We'll start with the game itself. Obviously, the Avalanche lose this thing 7-4. There's some good. I think there's more bad than good. But give me your take on everything.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful that we had the conversation about the goalies, knowing nothing about what the Dallas game would entail, and then coming out of it, I feel about the same as I do about the goalie situation, but now the defense is broken.
Yeah,
so it's like everything that you listen to, all the everydayers, if you enjoyed yesterday's episode, well, guess what? It's still true, but now we're going to talk about defense. That's a problem. And hey, you remember that beautiful penalty kill that we had at one certain point in time?
Oh man, did that implode or what?
It would have been, if you would have had just a normal penalty kill, this game would have been closer and not as ugly. Probably wouldn't have escaped because the Avs started with the lead. And when does that happen? So for the Avs to go up 1-0 and then the defense not help out. Honestly, it's one of those that it doesn't matter who your goalie is. If you have a defense like that playing in front of you, it's going to be hard.
Right.
And it goes back to the conversation of which goalie do you want when they're getting shelled, because that's what you're going to get night in, night out if your defense is playing this poorly. Oh, and you froze right there, but you can't anticipate your goalie to hold up, especially in a playoff type format of 4, 5, 6 games. Yeah, there you are. And you can't expect a goalie to stand up to that kind of shelling. So if you're asking if your team Eustace or Georgiev, like, you have to expect more out of your defense, or you're going to just completely run your goalie into the ground.
Well, I was going to start with the power play or the penalty kill, and how you were saying how it was just on cruise control for a long stretch. And if you had gone like if Dallas went like 2 for 3 or 2 for 4 or something like that, you would be sitting here saying like, all right, well that really good stretch is over, now start it again. But going 3 for 3, Dallas going 3 for 3, you are now sitting here like, oh God, is this the latest thing that we now have to, is this going to now last? Is this going to be the new thing? What's going to happen in Minnesota? If Minnesota gets a power play, you are immediately now thinking like, okay, what happened before Dallas was great. You're not thinking about that anymore. You were thinking the most immediate thing that's happened, and that is you getting taken to the cleaners on your penalty kill. So that is now, we were saying like the goalie situation is front and center. That's still there. Now we've added the penalty kill. And maybe that's just overthinking it because it's just one game, but because of who the opponent is and because of how easy it looked for them, you just feel like what happened? It's like the Avs just completely forgot how to do a penalty kill. And now that how much of a concern is that? First of all, let's stop committing penalties. We do that. That'd be nice. And if Minnesota does get a bunch, clean them all up.
And see, and now I hate doing this. It's one of those things that this is garbage time. And if the Avs are going to put forth this kind of effort and still 7-4 against the Central leading Dallas Stars, I mean, imagine with the air quote for the audio listeners, I have air quotes in the air, playoff hockey where everything's more intense and the Avalanche actually try and it's win or go home. You won't be replicating this effort, will you?
Well, we'll talk about that, but what are the things that the ESPN crew was saying over and over again in the beginning?
Oh, I had them muted, so please tell me.
Well, they kept talking about Dallas and how late they came in. They didn't get to come in the night before because of the weather, so they chose to come in the morning. They didn't get there until, I don't remember what time it was. It was almost like noon before they got in and got able to, were able to do anything. Were able to have a morning skate, do all of the routine stuff. It was, postponed a few hours, many hours. So they were harping on that. So I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, you have a team that's on a back-to-back, got in late, didn't get to do their normal routine till late. You're in Denver, which everybody loves to claim the altitude, is an issue. So I'm sitting here thinking like, hey, that was a first period where you had the lead, you gave up 2 late goals. I'm just waiting for the third period to get here. Waiting for that. Because, then all of this stuff that they're talking about will catch up to them. Never did. Well, it didn't to the point where it affected them, right? So, I mean, the Avalanche were what are they? In the third, it was 13-8. I thought there was more of a discrepancy in the third period on goals, or shots on goal. But the Avalanche started to they played the way that you have to when you're trailing, but none of that happened. And it wasn't like all of this stuff finally caught up to Dallas and the Avalanche just took control of everything and then just rattled off a bunch of goals and took advantage of a team that got in late on a back-to-back. All those other things that you want to talk about never happened.
And you mentioned a team on the back of a back-to-back. The Avalanche effort was the exact same they had when they were the team on the second half of a back-to-back in Edmonton after that the Minnesota game that we just witnessed. Like the effort was the exact same level, but you're at home. You're relatively fresh. Like you got a little bit of rest. The team you're playing is supposed to be the tired one, but they look like they had more energy than you.
They did. They were Avs looked really just flat-footed in the beginning. And then when they got that goal, which is kind of a fluky goal from Sean Walker, I was like, okay, fine. Like that's the beauty of hockey is one team is really in command, and it was an early goal, but one team's really looking like they're fresh while the other team is getting their sea legs, which why is that happening? You finally had a day off, you're back at home. Let's start this game off like on a good jump. And it just wasn't there. But they got that goal, and you're like, okay, maybe that just you got the crowd into it now. You got the early lead, invigorated, and for most of the first, it held 1-0, and then bam, bam, you get those 2 goals by the Stars, and now you're heading into the first down. You do have a power play because I think they committed that. Wasn't that? Yeah, that was the end of the first where they committed the power play. Dallas did, and didn't they come out and score? No, they didn't score on that one. There was the one a few minutes later that McKinnon or excuse me, Lehkonen scored on. So you pull it even, and then you get that double minor by Sean Walker that just sunk you.
Yep.
And I wish ESPN didn't do a good job of showing the replay. I mean, it was a high stick, but they didn't do a good job of showing like where all of the blood was. And I'm like, does Jamie Benn have razors in his hand, in his gloves or something? Because he's covering his face and you can't really see the blood. But it didn't. I mean, I've seen worse high sticks. I'm not trying to make an excuse for it, but just, I wanted to see it. I haven't seen it where all this blood was. That if you saw a different angle or whatever.
No, this goes back to our conversation we had earlier in the season. You remember all those double minors that were coming out of nowhere?
Yeah.
It was the referees just in the moment seeing the severity. They don't need the blood. They already just assess it's a double minor, going off the pain and the embellishment. And I feel like for everything Bednar's challenged to this point in the last 2 weeks, I'm surprised he didn't challenge this double minor.
You can't.
It's because
you can't challenge the penalty. That's the problem. But the reason why they do that is because they call the double minor so they can go review it. They can't review a just your garden variety 2-minute. So they do that so they can bring it down because they can't bring it up. So and that's my problem. So you're looking at it, and they didn't. ESPN did a terrible job of showing the replays. And I'm not saying like that they have to show it like if the ref saw it and it's there's blood on the ice. Buchagras said someone was scraping blood off the ice. Again, I didn't see it. I am not saying it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I'm just saying as wanting to get all of the information just as a spectator, show me that. Regardless, it ends up as a double minor, and Dallas gets both of them.
Yeah.
And if that's not demoralizing, I don't know. Like, even though you've done all this all year long, coming back from behind, and you're really good at doing it, it's a different animal when it's a team like Dallas. Even though you've done it to them twice, it's a different animal at this stage in the season. Like they want to wrap up this division and prevent you from getting another division title. But those 2 goals you just felt it. You just felt that they were crushers.
And for it to be like a Sagan he was the second one on that double minor. It's not Stankoven, it's Sagan. For goodness sake, like it just made you feel like, okay, this is going to be the type game this is, and it did all the way through up till the end. And it was Jamie Benn, I think he was the last goal scorer for Dallas. It's just it just cemented that effort, and nothing about the game felt good. And going into the rest of the week, you're curious on what the effort level is going to be the rest of the way up until the playoffs.
I mean, they were constantly. I mean, you're playing from behind, and on the one end, like the good that came out of this was offensively, you looked okay, but that's no surprise. You're an offensive-minded team, so you should be getting goals. It doesn't matter. You have the mindset. It doesn't matter who's in goal. We can score on them, and you just it's just tough to do that all the time, and it just seems like that's what the Avalanche are doing right now. Let's get back into the goalie conversation. We didn't really talk too much on Georgiev, but we'll talk about him. Does this change anybody's mindset? Or I kind of feel like it's more status quo and how people felt if they listened to yesterday's episode 24 hours later. They probably don't really have a change of mindset. So, but we will discuss it, and we'll do that next. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Excuse me. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. So bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. And what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, jumping back into this game between the Stars and the Avs, which they lose 7-4. A lot of focus, obviously, is on the goaltending situation. This is the other thing ESPN was really focusing in on in the beginning stages of the game was whenever Georgiev would make a save, and he made a handful of them. Dallas was in control of this game, and they were peppering him, and he was coming up with saves. They were making it a point to point out that he looks dialed in early on. And he was, but once they got those 2 goals, which was late. It was late in the first. When did they get the first one? It was like 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
In the first.
And Jamie Benn was about 40 seconds to go.
A minute later. Yeah. So like boom, boom. You get, those 2 get by him. And solid goals. Like, I don't think these were he had them. He had a couple. There was one on a power play that some guy was just camping right in the net front, and that one went right between his legs. But just at the beginning of the game, he looked good. He was making saves, and it was just funny how ESPN was going out of their way. It's like they know the Avalanche fan base talking points right now, so they were making it a point to say like he looks good early on, and then 7 goals later, we're having a different discussion, or 6 and an empty netter. But thoughts on how Georgiev played?
Honestly, you can't really change your stance on Georgiev, and it's one of those that we talked about. We'll see how he does in the Dallas game. Well, 12 goals in 2 games? Yeah. And like, you want to go farther back to the Predators game? Like, we're really getting ugly.
Tough stretch.
And you can't throw out the wins stat anymore when it comes to defending Georgiev, because honestly, let's just throw that out. It's not a goalie stat. It's just
man, you're going there. That is a disservice to goalies, my friend.
You're just there.
Don't do that. You're
just there.
That's sacrilege. And I'm not a goalie. That's sacrilegious, but go ahead.
And when it comes to Georgiev, I think he's a great guy. Wonderful soul, wonderful individual.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's something's wrong. And
sure there is. Yeah.
He's got the yips of some sort, because I can't remember the last time we had a goalie that we spent so much time breaking down why this was a bad goal, why this was a good goal, and like determining, he should have had this. No, he got scored on. And when the Avalanche go up, you're like, oh, well, this is a good position for the Avalanche to play in. And it was. Georgiev had a little bit of a safety net. You could see him play a little bit more relaxed. But when it comes down to a tie game, giving up the lead, like, it's you lose that confidence, and you see that in the way he's getting beat and his body language. It's just not there, and it's not confidence.
Well, this is the one thing that I've said with him for most of the season is you want that goalie that will win you those games. And when the defense is struggling and the defense is not performing up to their standard, you have a goalie bail them out. And it's been, the other way around for a lot of the season, where, the defense is bailing him out or the offense is bailing him out. And this was one of those games where the defense played horrible, absolutely horrible. Dallas was just, time and space was, oh my God, like Will Ferrell playing Harry Carey would have loved it. You know what I mean? Because like there was just so much that they were just doing really whatever, just carrying the puck wherever they want, as close as they wanted, and firing on net. So this is not all on him. A lot of it is on the defense, but it would be nice to have that. And I've said this how many times, Kyle, to have that guy that, when the defense is playing subpar, just says, I got you guys. I'm on my game tonight. Try to pick it up a little bit more. Don't throw all this junk on me, but I'm dialed in. And he just can't do that for a full 60 minutes. It's just not there.
And, I think this is a little bit of a culmination from the Edmonton game, because I remember, and it still stands out, and it played in my mind a couple times during this Dallas game. There was a goal that was led up by Georgiev, and Jack Johnson just kind of, you could see him mouthing, oh, come on. Like, I feel like it's, you got chocolate on my peanut butter, you got peanut butter on my chocolate. I feel like the defense is matching Georgiev, and Georgiev is matching the defense. There's no trust in either unit right now. Like, the defense doesn't trust Georgiev. Like, if they let up something, it's going in. And even if you have something contested, it's probably going in. And then Georgiev has no confidence on where the defense is playing. Is Kale going to be out of this world, or is he going to be a pylon? You don't know. So I feel like both of them, there's no trust in either one. And you saw how the Avalanche responded when Eustace came in response of Georgiev and how they tightened up. I wonder if that is the advantage that Eustace brings, is that trust level in defense.
Maybe, because you've seen Eustace do that. You've seen Eustace make really good goalie saves when his defense breaks down. So, I mean, that is where that's the one part where I really do like trust Eustace right now in that aspect of, if there's a breakaway, I'm like, and it's on Georgiev, I'm like, oh God, I hope he stops this. Where if it's on Eustace, I'm like, okay, this is a good chance he could stop this. There is a different mindset when it comes to that. Definitely. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how things pan out over these last few games. Do you still think like Eustace should be not okay? Let me phrase it this way, because I know you think he should be. Do you think he will be the number one goalie for game one? I should finish that thought.
Georgiev or Eustace?
Eustace. Do you think he will be?
I'm curious to see the rest of this week who gets the nod against Minnesota and who gets the nod in the multiverses game on Sunday.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question, because you'll get your answer like for the remainder of these games, because how Georgiev has played. If they know he's going to be the starter in game one, which I am 99.9% sure he's going to be, they're going to let him play those games to work it out. They're going to let him do that because you have a break. You play this game against Minnesota, and then you don't play till Saturday. So it's not like he's going to need the rest. So he's going to get that. So they're going to let him ride this thing out and hopefully break out of this thing in the few remaining games to be ready for game one.
I will tell you this right now. If Georgiev has another game of 5+ goals, there is no way you justify putting him as your number one starter game one of the playoffs.
Oof, I don't know, man.
Because how are you going to shake that in a playoff type environment? It doesn't get any better for you.
I mean, it's just their back is up against the wall with Annan, and just go back and listen to yesterday's episode if you haven't. Like, I just feel like there's nothing that Georgiev can do that will relinquish his spot because of Annunen just not having any experience in the playoffs. And I don't think the Avs want to go down that road. So he could give up 10 the rest of the season, and he's their guy. They got to ride it. I know you don't agree with that, but it's just
you rather win games than be. There's no loyalty to Georgiev right now. Like, you have to win games, and what puts you in a better position to do that? And that'd be Eustace.
All right. All right, let's get to how this play will it carry into not just Georgiev as a whole. Will what the Avalanche have been this year? I mean, over the course of 82 games, you get a good feel of what a team is. Is that just going to continue into the playoffs? So we'll discuss that coming up next. First, let's hear from Sleeper, and we do this all the time. Kyle looks high and low all around the interwebs to try to find a better daily fantasy app than Sleeper. Running out of time, sir. It's not looking good.
I thought I found something, but then the eclipse happened, and it was just a mirage. So no, Sleeper is still number one.
It was just a shadow of Sleeper. So Sleeper is the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. And Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. This is where I turn to you, sir, to get your pick for your daily fantasy player of the Colorado Avalanche in their next game, which, of course, is against the Minnesota Wild. Who are you liking in this one?
If you're going over your fantasy projection, let's go Jonathan Drouin, who has already tied career high in points. He's playing with house money.
Great one. So all you got to do is pick whether studs like Jonathan Drouin will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus. and more in a given game. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That code is LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So we say it all the time, like you want to be playing your best hockey going into the playoffs. Doesn't matter how you start the season. You want to start, kind of reaching your peak or at your peak, obviously heading into the postseason. And for the Avalanche 2 weeks ago, you were feeling good. You had that 9-game winning streak. That's what you wanted to do. And man, like that's just erased. So it's been an up and down season. Like it's been a good season. You got 102 points. Like that is good. But there's a lot of behind the curtain stuff with that 102 points. And the question that I threw at the subtext, and I'll throw it to you and get the subtext people's response to that. What do you think? Like, are you the optimist where you just feel like, no, like, hey, this is a team that can turn it up in the playoffs and play their best hockey in the playoffs, or maybe the pessimist route where they are what they are, and the problems that have persisted in the regular season are going to be there in the postseason.
You see, like I would be very confident in this Avalanche team. If you look at the roster, you look at what you can do going into the playoffs. Like if you just turn a switch and say playoff hockey, let's go, I would be all about the Avalanche. But you have dangled the carrot in front of the Avalanche. You could win the Central. You just keep playing good and get those 2 points. You could get the Central. That wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And honestly, then you could say, well, how about your playoff matchup, your seeding? That's up for grabs. Just keep on with this effort. That's not enough to keep this team going. You have games like Dallas. And honestly, I hate to say it, and I know it's not going to be a popular thing right now, but I really am not hearing the Nathan MacKinnon Hart conversation either with what Kucherov and McDavid are doing right now. And then Nathan MacKinnon's cooling off a little bit right now.
Yeah.
It's
that doesn't bother me.
But it should bother Nathan MacKinnon that you hear all the time, like he's got his Stanley Cup, he's got this, he's got that, he just doesn't have the heart. Well, you're right there, buddy. Like you're matching Kucherov every step of the way, and now that's starting to tail off.
Well, no, he's still there. He's still there.
Where's the push? Where it's like this is where it counts. This is garbage time. This is where you could really show out.
He's still there, but he hasn't had that, hat trick or 4-5 point game. Like but I mean, he had 2 assists, I think, in the game against Dallas. So that's another 2-point game. Like he's still doing what he's doing. Like,
it's harder to talk about Nathan MacKinnon and look at what he could do for the Heart when his team is getting obliterated 7-4.
Right. No, the losses don't help that narrative. I'll grant you that, but if it's down to an individual award, like he's doing just fine in that.
And then to finish it out, like a pedestrian Cale Makar season. Like you want to see that wake up at some point would be great, and it just hasn't happened.
Which but a pedestrian Cale Makar season is still a pretty darn good season. It's a darn good season. It is. I think just the expectation with him is you need to be otherworldly, and he obviously has that ability to do it. Is it where we expected it to be? No, I think it's been below that, but any other defenseman in the league would love to have the season that he's had.
Sure.
It's, so get over to the subtext people, how they feel about this. Amy, I'm feeling nostalgic for that supreme confidence I had. The win streak after the trade deadline. I have to admit, I'm nervous about the playoffs. I think that's valid. I think a lot of Avalanche fans are, and I wouldn't say that you're wrong for feeling that way. But the fact that this team has a cup, well, it's odd to say that because there's so many guys in this team that are not around anymore that's had that, that won that cup. Because I was going to go the route of they know what it takes to win it. there's still a handful of guys on the team that do, and they can. And there's guys that won cups on other teams too. That so they know they have the pedigree of a Stanley Cup championship team. But it is going to be different. I mean, it's not supposed to be easy. They made it look easy in 2022. They made it look very easy. And this year, if it happens, it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, there are some guys that know what it's like to win a cup, just none of the goaltenders.
This is from Vargar. Neither goalie is good enough to win a cup. Last season wasn't normal for Georgiev. This season's results are back to his career average. Eustace is consistently inconsistent. Look at his numbers. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think his numbers are pretty good. But he says if the Avs fail to make it out of the first round, it's not either of the goalies' fault. They are who they are, and that's the level they've played at their entire careers. The fault is on Chris McFarland for believing in fool's gold. He built a team with a fatal flaw. It's a pretty good point.
Yep.
But I don't know what you do with it. Like they threw their eggs in the Georgiev basket. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you had to go address those. Yeah, is that a fatal flaw? I mean, if they get knocked out in the first round, yes. But they had other fatal flaws on the team that they addressed. And you can't keep plugging the holes on the Titanic because other ones like pop up. And that was the one that they just could not. Where are you going to go? Getting I mean, if you want to say like he should have got a better backup, I'm with you on that. I am with you on that because that is showing right now. Because we had the conversation yesterday about the Frankie thing. If you had a serviceable backup, you'd feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm feeling comfortable with Eustace. I'm just not feeling comfortable with playoff Eustace because I don't know what that brings. So I think that's a good point that he brings up about that, though, to not address that, which could have been difficult anyway, because it's the backup goalie market, and it's next to impossible to get a starting goalie at the trade deadline. It's tough. I understand what he's saying, but it's a tough position to address at the deadline. It is.
And like to Vargar's point, I think the fatal flaw goes a little bit farther back. I think the fatal flaw for the Avalanche is winning the cup with Darcy Kemper, because they believe that
that's exactly right. Yep.
I believe they think, because it's the goalie version of Val Nichushkin. When's the last time the Avalanche have called up somebody from the Eagles to fill in a slot? They're signing players to be Nichushkins on the forwards, and goalies, they're expecting everybody to be Darcy Kemper.
This is the way that the Avalanche are going to address the goalie for a while. Like, they are not like, if they fast forwarding, if they move on from Georgiev, they are not replacing him with someone Henrik Lundqvist-esque guy, or one of those just big stature guy. Like, they don't, number one, they don't have the money to go out and get like a Hellebuck or a Vasilevsky or something. Like, they don't have the money to do that, and that's not what they believe in. And what Kyle said is 100% true. They won with Darcy Kemper, and that's not a knock on Darcy Kemper. That is a mid-range goalie, which they feel like they can win that way. And that's they've crafted this team to have a goalie fill in the blank on who it is to be their guy. Right now, it's Alexander Georgiev. So if it's not him next year, who's it going to be? Who knows if they go the Eustace route? I mean, that's a conversation for later. But this is the problem they built for themselves. If they don't catch lightning in a bottle with a goalie, it's a problem.
Yep.
And that's where we're at right now.
Don't worry. When they sign Mackenzie Blackwood, everything will be fine.
Kyle,
you heard it here first.
He will have that jersey. Actually,
back out the trash.
It's already in the checkout. He's already done the personalized jersey. He's just waiting for it to happen so he can hit sale.
Miles Wood, Mackenzie Blackwood, Avalanche jerseys. Let's go.
And to be fair, I have the Gossespierre one on in the checkout one. Yeah. Zach says, I think the Avs need to focus on the playoffs, use the rest of the games as preparation, figure out the goalie situation, and win the cup. Zach, if it was just that easy, we would have a different tone right now. I love the optimism. I love the optimism. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to figure out the goalie situation. It's just easier said than done. Joe, I have many concerns, but after sitting on that game for a whole day, I can't be too mad at Georgiev. The team really let him down defensively. I hope they get things tightened back up and hold second for the home advantage against the Jets, as realistically the division is all but lost. They just need a couple games for everyone to click back together. And I'm trying to remind myself they are different. They are a different animal in the playoffs. I think that's well said comment. I do. I think that there's a lot of optimism there. There's some reality there. They did not play well. This is why I don't like why they played well. Yeah, and use these last few games, get back on track. And I think that's lost on some people, like just to feel like, because this is how the season is ending, that the Avs like can't course correct. They definitely can. They did it in 2022. They didn't end that season well, if you remember. They ended that season on a downer and kicked it off. And how people are feeling now, that's how they felt in 2022 heading into the playoffs. People were thinking like this is over because they were not playing well the last couple weeks of the season.
And I wouldn't go so far in the Avalanche are a different team in the playoffs because you don't know that yet. They were in 23 and they were in 22. You don't know what this team's going to look like in the playoffs. This is a completely different team than last year and the cup winning year too. So yes, the playoffs are different, but you don't know how this Avalanche team's going to react in the playoffs.
It's true. Yeah. Easton says, I don't know, just seems hot and cold. 2022 ended hot. I mean, if he's talking about the Stanley Cup, it ended hot.
Can't get
like
hotter.
I just said, like the regular season did not end hot. 23 ended crashing in the ice to Seattle. I hope we can end this season on top. So yeah, I mean, I think just as a fan, like you want to feel like your team can get themselves up for the playoffs. Could happen. We'll obviously have to wait and see. So I think that's a lot. Thinking for a lot of people, there are some people that it's just doom and gloom. It's like, nope, how they're playing now is how they'll play in the playoffs. It's over. Phone it in. I think it had one guy on YouTube comment saying like, I'm done. Like, I'm moving on. I'm like, well, you've made it this far, and we got like 4 games left in the regular season, and now you're phoning it in.
Yeah, it's hard to turn down the call of Rockies baseball right now. I get it.
Oh God. Walk-off grand slam though, man. That was exciting. And Madam Battleaxe said moment of silence for the last 60 minutes. Yeah, she's always got witty things to say, but I think she's an optimist. Like she's ready to go. She's got faith in this Avalanche team. I think she kind of feels like everybody else is like, oh, not going so well right now. But that's not what I feel like is going to define this team. And I think that they can kick it up in the playoffs. So I like where Madam Battleaxe's head is at right now.
Yeah, I like to laugh to keep from crying too.
All right. That is going to wrap it up for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and making it a first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss this Wild game, which we really didn't get to talk too much. I mean, obviously, it's clear what needs to happen for the Avalanche. If you want to turn this thing, or if you want to use these last few games to turn this thing around, now is the time. Because the wheels have already fallen off because Marc-Andre Fleury took them off, literally, of Trennan's car. So we got to get those tires back on. Boy, if that's not a metaphor for what's going on right now, I don't know what is.
Oh, man.
So, all right. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.